Dealio guys, and welcome back. So as promised, we have the new Nat 5 god, not goddess, but god, aka Zeus, who also came out with the new content. So if you want to obtain Zeus, congratulations, you can't pull him. He is only available by doing the dimension defense. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it here. Alright, so starting off, before we actually do the actual review, when I clicked on one of the Zeuses, his stance right here, dude, I gotta do it, man. I gotta do it. He's just like, can you guys see? He's just like, yeah, man. Yeah, but yeah, had to do it because I know dark candling has his own thing, or candling in general, but I figured I would go ahead and do that. So if you guys are doing that in public, congratulations, you are definitely the alpha male, even though that title doesn't exist. But anyways, moving forward here, we have Fire Zeus, who is a balance type, and he's coming in with 32k HP, 3.3k attack, and then 2.7k defense. Pretty normal for Nat 5, nothing extremely interesting. He does have his leader skill as well, which seems to be a crit lead. Yep. So he boosts up some critical hit rate, not necessarily crit lead, but boosting up your critical hit rate lead, shall I clarify. And then for his 3-star skill, he has Buff Breaker, which grants a 90% chance to dispel all enemies' enhancements, including shields and immunity, basically everything in the game. And then for his 5-star skill, he has Attack Up. Now, full Buff Breaker obviously is a kind of new skill that's been introduced here within the recent months. So its usage, obviously in a PvP situation, is great. I do believe Fire Glenda has that on her active versus her 3-star skill, so it's kind of harder to get to, but at least with Zeus we do have full control over that, at least to some capacity. And also with him being a balance type already, he's not here to do damage, he's here to kind of support the squad while, you know, boosting up their DPS and dispelling whatever he's fighting, which, spoiler alert, is probably going to be for the dimension defense itself. So full Buff Breaker receives a 20% damage boost and goes up to 100% for whatever turn. There's no turn duration, it just goes up to 100%, I do want to clarify. And then Attack Up receives the 20% damage boost as well, and it goes up to 3 turns. So once again, you could bring this in a PvP situation if you really wanted to, though I don't find Attack Up to be that super duper amazing. The main selling point though is just the 3-star skill and control over that 3-star skill, which when you're fighting against a monster that likes to proc up shields every single turn could be very, very important. Coming in next though, we do have Water Zeus, who is a tank type, which it just sounds weird to me to say Water Zeus. Isn't Zeus supposed to be lightning? But we won't talk about that. But anyways, he's coming in with 40.7k HP, 2.2k attack, and then 2.5k defense. Once again, nothing extravagant in the whole stat distribution department. This is pretty much not ideal, but pretty much acceptable. So let's go ahead and move on over here to his skills. So for his 3-star skill, he has Blind, which grants 80% chance to blind the enemy for 3 turns. And then for his 5-star skill is Defense Down, which grants 80% chance to reduce the enemy's defense for 2 turns. This to me already seems extremely lackluster because, I mean, we do have other mons, especially like, what is it, Light Neza, who has Blind and Weaken, if I'm recalling correctly. So I guess if you didn't have a Light Neza, but you needed to use Blind because you're hitting one of the Titans, aka like Light Titan specifically, that could be useful. But outside of that, unless I'm missing something, this doesn't really seem to be super duper appealing. Now, the Dimension Defense Dungeon did come out today as well. I have not done that yet. So this could play a role in there. It couldn't. I'm not saying that it does, but it could. But overall, just a very lackluster Astromon for sure. Like, Blind and Defense Down could work in a certain scenario, but it's extremely niche. I would argue even more niche than the Fire one, because you can at least use a Fire one with some control, especially even in a PvP environment, even though he may not be optimal for that situation. But Blind receives a 20% damage boost and goes up to, what is that, 90% for 3 turns. And then Defense Down receives a 20% damage boost and goes up to 100% for 2 turns. So even with books, I don't know, dude. Maybe I'm wrong. It just feels like Water Zeus just hits different. Coming in after that, though, we do have Wood Zeus over here, who's a balance type. He's coming in with 30.6k HP, 3.1k attack, and then 3k defense. So once again, nothing super duper amazing. They're just basic Nat 5 stats. So I was hoping things would be a little bit more interesting with him, either in terms of stats or skills, because he's a mon that is bound to the dimension defense. So that's the only way that we can obtain him. But in this scenario, so far, I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know, man. It's not been smiley face gaming over here. But for his 3-star skill, he has Weaken, which grants a 7% chance to weaken an enemy for 2 turns. And then for his 5-star skill, he has Lethal Strike. For whatever reason, when I first saw that, I immediately thought that was like Creative Strike, but it's not. It's Lethal Strike. So my take on this is Weaken is obviously a very necessary skill depending on your team composition, but Lethal Strike means you would be playing yourself if you decided to slide freaking Wood Zeus into Titans, because Lethal Strike isn't Creative Strike. They are 2 different things. That's not to say that Wood Zeus is going to be useless at all, but it does seem like things may be a little bit more leaning towards the whole dimension defense in itself here, because I do have a list of it pulled up, and the Astromon in question uses Recovery, Seal, and Full Buff Breaker, at least for the water element. Obviously you could bring in Lethal Strike somewhere else if you needed to, but it's just interesting to see how his stat distribution is and how useful he's going to be. But outside of that, I don't really see much usage. So it's like, once again, he's kind of bound to the dimension defense, which is kind of cool. But once you have him and he's only used for the dimension defense, it's like, okay, what happens if I stop doing that? I do understand that we do get gems from the dimension defense, but I was hoping that we have at least an Astromon with more than one use up there. But I mean, general consensus for him for right now is I would definitely claim that he needs testing to be done to see if he's viable for the dimension defense content, and if he's not, then I really don't see much of a usage for him at all. But Weaken receives a 20% damage boost, and it goes up to 80% for 3 turns. And then Lethal Strike receives a 20% damage boost as well. So yeah, very odd, at least in terms of the RGB here. To me, Fire already seems the most appealing out of the 3, but keep in mind at the time of this recording, I haven't even dabbled into the dimension defense yet. So things could obviously change here. Alright, and then coming in hot after that, we do have freaking Light Zeus over here, who's an attacker type, and he's over here just flexing on us. And he's coming in with a whopping 28k HP. Yeah, 28k, man. 4k attack, and then nearly 2.5k defense. I'll give him that. Once again, stat distribution is okay. But skill-wise, for his 3-star skill, he has Battle Rush, 10% all allies, HP and SP. Basically just like Light Shiva. And then for the 5-star skill, it's Puncture with a 85% base for the puncture in itself, which is interesting because it seems like every time they introduce mons after Draka, it's like, here's puncture, but we're gonna lower it. We're gonna just keep lowering it and lowering it and lowering it. But keep in mind, we have to go through the freaking gauntlet to get Light Zeus, and then we get slapped in the face with an 85% puncture. It's like, why would I do that? Why would I invest all this time and effort and this is all that I get? Like, I can pick up something else within a couple of months of playing that is way more accessible and easier to Evo 3 than this. So it's like, okay. Skillbook wise, Battle Rush doesn't even go up to 15%. I mean, it gets what, a 25% damage boost, and then Puncture goes up to 100% and gets a 20% damage boost F fully booked up. So you're gonna have to invest in him if you really want to get the most damage out of him. Now, I'm not saying that this is bad, but my complaint about this already, we already have other Astromons that do this exact same job, and they don't cost nearly as much effort or time or anything to get the same effect. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just not necessarily a slap in the face, but it's like, yeah, you have all this effort, and here you just have another mon that fits in the same box as a large group of mons that are arguably a lot easier to obtain as long as you're patient. Why? I don't know. I don't know. You can use them in PvP if you want. Do I recommend it? It's none of my business. You could definitely use them in PvE as a wave clearer, which is what I hinted to before, but it's just like, yeah, you spent all this time and this is what we get. And then last, and hopefully not least, we do have Dark Zeus over here, who's an attacker type. He's coming in with nearly 28k HP, 3.9k attack, and then about 2.8k defense. So very slightly less HP, slightly less attack, but more defense. But overall stat distribution is pretty darn similar to the light one. So for his 3-star skill, he has immunity, which grants 100% chance to remove all negative effects from the user and grants them immunity for 2 turns. And then for his 5-star skill, he has shield. Which grants a shield to allies proportional to his own max attack power for 3 turns. Already I'm looking at this, I'm like, yep, this definitely has to be a PvP mon or kind of a more dimension defense focused mon, because obviously immunity is great if he's being attacked. Immunity is useless if he's not being attacked and being applied with debuffs on himself. And the shield, I mean, you can't go wrong with the shield depending on whatever situation that you're doing in terms of the content, and this could prove to be useful. In certain scenarios here. Skill wise though, immunity receives a 20% damage boost, doesn't really matter, and it goes to 3 turns. And then shield receives a 30% damage boost as well. So I mean, thinking about uses once again, possibly the dimension defense, possibly, don't quote me on it. Outside of that, this is just pretty much just a standard PvP unit. Yeah, it's just kind of sad face gaming though that he's kind of bound to this content in order for us to get him, and not even like one of these Zeuses are super duper appealing. Not one of these stand out to me like, oh my goodness, I have to have this one. I mean, am I going to go for him? Obviously for the Astro Guide, but for him to be one of the freaking gods, his whole skill set isn't godly at all. But once again, this is just one man's opinion. Before I do shut this video down though, I think in terms of what, like appeal or usage, at least to me, I would honestly say that, you know, you got to go for light and dark. So I would say light would be number 1, followed by dark number 2 in terms of what I would try and aim for. And then after that would be fire, then wood, and then I would probably end it with water here, because the issue is that he doesn't really bring anything new to the table, and in terms of investment, a lot more manageable in the long run. But once again, feel free to leave your comments below about Zeus. I'm not hating on his look, I'm just hating that he's not as spicy as I wanted him to be. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If today's your birthday, happy birthday, and see you.